Okay, so guys, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a total research nerd, and getting to like join all of these other research nerds and talk to you about research today is kind of like a dream. So my talk is a little bit different. We're not going to get deep into one specific research method, but we are going to explore a question that has been plaguing marketers and business leaders since the dawn of time. So that question is, why do customers really buy? So if you want to market smarter and you want to sell more stuff, you have to be able to answer this question. And let me tell you, I used to think that I knew how to answer this question. In fact, I thought I was pretty smart. So here's a little background on me. So at 28, I had launched my third company. My branding agency was growing quickly. We were working with clients like Target and Holiday Inn. I had sold my restaurant consulting business in under 2 years, and I had launched a VC-backed tech company that Forbes and Inc. would later call the next LinkedIn. So that last one, that did not work out as planned. It went a lot more like this. And so I'm going to save you the details of what happened. But since I'm talking to you right now and not sipping a margarita on the beach, we did not become the next LinkedIn. Why? We knew who our customers were, but we didn't really understand why customers used our product. So I do not want you guys to make the same mistakes. In fact, I started my current company, Customer Camp, specifically to help you to get out of the red zone and into the yellow zone. And we do that by helping people to deeply understand their customers. So that brings me back to the million-dollar question. Why do customers really buy? So if you ask your team or your client why people buy from them, chances are they're going to tell you something about the product or service. They're going to say, our software is easy to use, or we're cheaper than the competition, or our sandwiches are the best in town. I love this gift. So while all of that might be true, these are not the answers that you need. If you want to get big marketing results, the kinds worth bragging about, then you can't just focus on the product. You need to better understand your customers. So how do you do that? So for a long time, marketers, we all thought this was the way. You go out and you'd create these profiles on each customer segment, like the ones from HubSpot. And the goal was always the same. The more we know about our customers, the better we can market to them. And in theory, this makes sense. Data-driven decision-making is awfully a lot better than like the Mad Men marketing days, the days when marketing was led on gut instinct and stereotypes. And so marketers said, hey, we need more customer data. Please give us more customer data. And of course, companies were happy to oblige. And so today, we just have an astronomical amount of data about our customers. We know who they are, right? So we know their demographic stuff, their age, their income, their location. We know the firmographic stuff. So we know their job titles. We know the industries they work in. We know what they're searching for, and we know what they're clicking on, and we know where they're spending their money, and we know where they're spending their time. And some companies will even promise to tell us how our customers feel by analyzing the words they use and the content they share online. So we are drowning in audience data, but we don't know what to do. So this is the problem, right? So according to Profitwell, it actually costs 50% more to acquire a customer today than it did 5 years ago. And that is really depressing. And the problem is that we have so much customer data, but it doesn't tell us what we desperately need to know. It doesn't tell us why customers buy. So let's look at an example. I recently bought a new alarm clock. Now I'm a 35-year-old woman. I'm married. I don't have any kids yet. I live in a small city in Canada. I like drinking wine and listening to business podcasts. I'm active on lots of social media channels and I follow lots of influencers. I like Apple products and I drive a Volkswagen sport wagon. So these are all attributes about who I am. And this can be really useful when it comes to targeting more people like me. But even if you can get in front of me, what are you going to say? After all, none of this actually explains why I bought the alarm clock. So again, back to the question, why do people really buy things? And more importantly for us marketers, how can we convince people to buy what we're selling? These questions, they used to keep me up at night. I felt like I was drowning in customer data and still starving for answers. And then I discovered this guy. So this is Clayton Christensen. Clay was a professor at Harvard Business School, and he's widely considered to be the world's foremost expert on innovation. So according to Clay, we are, after decades of watching great companies fail, we've come to the conclusion that focus on correlation, on knowing more and more about customers, is actually taking businesses in the wrong direction. What we really need to home in on is the progress that customers are trying to make in a given context. This is what we've come to call the job to be done. Now, I'm sure that some of you have probably heard of jobs to be done. I know that some of the other speakers were going to talk about it. For those of you who haven't, jobs to be done is a theory for understanding what motivates people to buy and use new things. So the theory is pretty simple. People buy things because they want to make their lives better. They want progress, but they're struggling because there are these obstacles in their way. And so they hire products to help them get their job done. If the product works well, then they're happy. They're going to keep using it. They're going to tell their friends how great it is. But if it doesn't work well, then they're going to fire it and they're going to look for something new to hire. So this way of framing why people buy things, it was just this aha moment for me. Now, I do want to say that it's important to understand that this is not about what your product does. It's about what your customers can do because of your product. And this is an important distinction, and it's one that a lot of marketers miss. So Kathy Sierra says it really well. She says, upgrade your user, not your product. Don't build better cameras, build better photographers. And so who would have thought that with all of the technology that we have today, that some of the world's best known photographers actually use this as their tool of choice rather than this? So the thing here is that even in some contexts, a worse product can actually do a better job. So let's return to my alarm clock example. So when I bought my new alarm clock, technically what I was buying was this, but what I really wanted was this. So I had made a New Year's resolution to get fit. And I hired my alarm clock to help me become this better version of myself, the kind of person who wakes up early in the morning and goes for a run. Now, in the past, I'd use my smartphone as an alarm clock, and that worked fine. But when I started wanting to get up 90 minutes earlier, the phone became a problem. So with my phone sitting on my nightstand, I would just end up scrolling social media in bed rather than actually going to sleep on time. And then when morning came along, I was groggy. It was way too easy to hit snooze and stay in bed. So this new alarm clock, it doesn't have a snooze button, which is huge. And it's definitely not connected to the internet, so I can't scroll Twitter at midnight. What it does have is a loud bell that is so jarring that it nearly gives me a heart attack every time it goes off. So that makes it way harder. I can't just roll over and go back to sleep. So now that you know what you know of my situation and you understand what triggered me to begin the buying journey in the first place, what job was I actually trying to get done? Well, it might look like this. Force me to get out of bed earlier in the morning. So this is really neat, right? Because rather than focusing on who a customer is, which doesn't actually explain why they buy things, jobs to be done will help you to zero in on what they actually want to achieve. And when you understand your customers' jobs, you're going to see who your real competitors are. So let's pretend that you had this same job to do and you didn't hire an old school alarm clock. What else might you hire? Well, if you lived in medieval times, you could hire a jug of water to do the job because people had this job then too, right? So back in the 1400s, they didn't have alarm clocks or electricity. So if they wanted to force themselves out of bed earlier, they drink a bunch of water before they go to sleep. So it's pretty hard to sleep in when you really have to pee. Or maybe you could hire an alarm clock rug to do the job. So this alarm clock literally forces you out of bed because the only way to turn it off is by standing on it for 30 seconds. Or maybe like me, your big problem is that you weren't going to bed on time because you keep bringing your cell phone into your bedroom and you'd stay up all night scrolling. So if that's you, you may not buy the old school alarm clock. Maybe you buy a cell phone lockbox like this one. So there are lots of different solutions that you could hire to get the job done. And the one that's best for you, it's going to depend on the progress that you are trying to make. And it's going to depend on the context of your situation. So here's the thing, understanding your customers' jobs, it's complex and it's multifaceted and there's a lot to understand. There's the functional stuff, the social stuff, the emotional dimensions, but when you take the time to do it, I promise you it is well worth it. So a deep understanding of your customers' jobs, it's going to give you a clearer picture of what's actually driving purchasing decisions. And this is the best part for marketers like us. When you understand what causes people to begin looking for a new solution, this is what I call the trigger, you can figure out how to get in front of the right people in less crowded channels with better messages. So actually understanding your customers' jobs, it's going to make your job as a marketer easier. So these are some of the top companies that I'm sure you're familiar with. These are companies that are using jobs to be done. Companies like Intercom and Casper, they're really good examples because they're actually relatively new businesses that have grown into billion-dollar businesses because they understand their customers' jobs. Intercom is actually so passionate about jobs to be done that they wrote a book on it. All right, so now if you want to figure out how to get this information, how do you go about getting it? You can't just ask your customer what their job to be done is in like a survey or like on the phone quickly and be like, what's your job to be done? They're not going to be able to explain it to you because they don't think about their purchasing decisions like that. They would struggle to answer. And in fact, 95% of purchases are actually driven by unconscious urges, the biggest one being emotion. So we buy for emotional reasons and then we justify our decisions with logic. And this is true in all purchase decisions, including B2B ones. So don't tell me B2B people, it's not emotional. So here's the thing, if you want to market smarter, then you need to get below the surface level stuff. You need to get below the stuff you're going to learn in a survey or by listening in on a sales call. That's a start, but it's not enough. What you really want are your customers' stories. That is where the deep gold is buried. So the absolute best method I have found for understanding customers is conducting one-on-one interviews with actual buyers. So ideally people who have recently bought from you and they're going to remember the details of that buying journey. Now I call these types of interviews clarity calls because they're going to help you to get so clear on what actually matters to your customers. And believe me, they're like so powerful. So Des Traynor, he's one of the founders of Intercom. He says one interview is worth 1,000 surveys. And this is pretty powerful coming from Des, considering that Intercom actually allows you to create surveys. All right, so when you are doing these interviews, your number one objective of these clarity calls, as I call them, is to explore your customer's buying journey in exacting detail. So a typical buying journey, it includes a bunch of the same steps. It's very familiar. And it starts with a trigger event. And that is a moment when your customer first realizes that they want to make progress and that they need a new solution. And then they move along the buying journey and it ends with them using your product, consuming it and trying to say, did it work? Did I get what I was hoping for? Did I make the progress that I'd hoped for? Is my job done? And if they're happy, they're going to stay with it. If they're not happy, they're going to start passively looking for something else to hire. So it's all of these details that you can gather from your customer's buying journey that is going to give you so much insight into how to grow your marketing and how to improve your marketing. Okay, so that said, so many marketers are missing out. They are not investing the time to understand why people buy, and they're not trying to see what the triggers are that might make people begin the buying journey. So many marketers, they put all of their effort at this stage of the buying journey, the active looking stage, the stage where customers are actively looking for a solution like theirs, rather than trying to target people who are passively looking for a solution. And that is a big mistake. So there's so much you can learn by getting in front of people sooner, people who aren't actively looking for a solution like yours. Okay, so here's an example. If you do a search in Uber Suggest, which is a keyword planner tool, you'll see that 12,000 people are searching for the term how to wake up earlier every month. So if you sell alarm clocks, you can see that it actually be relatively easy to write content to rank for these keywords. And ads are actually pretty cheap too. So relatively easy at this passive looking stage to get in front of people. But what happens when people start actively looking for an old school alarm clock? Well, the keywords twin bell alarm clock are only searched for about 600 times a month. Yet from an SEO perspective, this is way more competitive. So the paid difficulty on these keywords is 100 compared to 5 for how to wake up earlier. So 100 is the highest you can go, just so you know. And what that means is that if you're targeting buyers that are already looking for a solution like yours, it's 19 times more competitive to get in front of them when they are actively looking. So that's a problem. There's also something neat you can see in this graph. So look what it tells us. It tells us that a lot of people are actually looking for old school alarm clocks in January, more than in any other month. There's a bump there. And that's because, as you heard from my story, probably New Year's Eve resolutions triggered them to strive to get out of bed earlier because they want to achieve their life goals. So again, these stories can tell us what our customers are doing and why. So we know as marketers, though, that it's not just about getting in front of potential customers. That's only the first step. Then we need to give them a compelling reason to choose us over the competition. So do you think most marketers are doing that well? Nope, not really. So if you search on Amazon for Bell alarm clock, you're going to get 400 results. And when you view the product pages, most of them are really bad. So for starters, all of the photos are just pictures of alarm clocks from various angles. None of the photos actually show the buyer's motivation for buying an alarm clock in the first place. So they want to wake up earlier. So imagine how much your product might stand out if you included an aspirational image like this one. And the same is true for a lot of the product descriptions. So I read 20 different product descriptions, and most of them just describe the features of the alarm clock. How big is it? What material is it made of? How loud is the alarm? None of them actually talked about how the alarm clock could make your life better. So if you sold alarm clocks and you understood why your customers really buy, why wouldn't you put that in your copy? So your copy could look like this. You could say, stop hitting snooze on your life goals. Wake up earlier with this no snooze alarm clock. Because again, the no snooze is the benefit, right? So super loud alarm forces you out of even the deepest sleep. No snooze button means no temptation to sleep in. Keep your phone out of the bedroom, so no midnight scrolling. So these are the types of things that are really going to be compelling for your customer because it explains what they're actually looking for. Okay, so we're at time and I'm really excited to answer any questions that you guys have. I just want to leave you with a couple thoughts. So again, customers don't buy products because of who they are. They buy because of who they want to become. They're actually hiring those products to help them overcome obstacles in their lives that are holding them back from making progress. And therefore, success in your marketing and in business more broadly, it's not just about gathering data about your customers. It's not just about looking at their demographic information or surveying them about their attitudes or beliefs or opinions. You really need to go deeper. You need to go deep and explore the buying journeys of what led them to your product in the first place, the motivations that made them choose you, and you need to gather their stories. So when you're doing your audience research, don't just settle for the surface level stuff. You need to go deeper. And so some of you might be excited to get started, but I know because I talk to a lot of people who want to do audience research that there might be something holding you back. And that is actually convincing your boss or your client to let you talk to customers. So this is a huge challenge for a lot of marketers. And it can be a problem to overcome, but I do want to help you with it. So I put together a done for you email script that you can use to get buy-in. So this email template, it's like this clever framework. It's going to help you to build an argument for why you should do customer interviews. And it's going to help you to overcome your team's objections. And it's also going to make you look like a bit of a badass. So you can grab this on my website. You can go to customercamp.com, get buy-in. I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. And that is it for me. So I'm excited to answer any questions people have. I just dropped the link in the chat for anyone who wants to grab it. And thank you for coming to my talk today.